You ever feel like everything was going fine, and then suddenly, it wasn't? The conversations were consistent. The energy felt mutual. There was effort, attention, interest. It wasn't one-sided. You could feel it. The way they replied, the way they showed up, the way things naturally flowed without you forcing anything. And then, without any clear reason, something shifts. Not dramatically. Not in a way you can clearly point at. Just subtly. The replies get shorter. The energy feels different. The pauses between messages get longer. The enthusiasm that once felt natural now feels forced or completely gone. And you notice it instantly, not because you're overthinking, but because something actually changed. And the moment you feel that shift, your mind starts searching. What happened? What did I do? Did I say something wrong? Did I act differently? You go back, replaying conversations, scanning for that one moment where things might have gone off, that one detail you missed. Because it doesn't make sense. People don't just lose interest for no reason, right? And that's where the confusion starts. Because from your perspective, nothing changed. You were the same. You didn't suddenly become a different person. You didn't intentionally do anything wrong. So why does it feel like their perception of you changed overnight? And the more you try to figure it out, the more frustrating it becomes. Because you're looking for a clear answer in something that doesn't present itself clearly. And that lack of clarity creates pressure. You start over-analyzing your own behavior, questioning things that felt normal before, even doubting moments that were completely fine at the time. And slowly, it stops being about them losing interest, and starts becoming about you trying to understand what's wrong with you. But here's the part most people don't realize. This shift you're feeling doesn't always come from something you did, and it definitely doesn't happen as suddenly as it feels. What you're experiencing is the result of something that was already building, quietly, gradually, in a way you couldn't see in real time, because interest doesn't just disappear instantly. It fades, it changes, it adjusts based on things that are not always obvious on the surface. And when you don't understand those underlying shifts, it feels random. It feels personal. It feels like something you caused. But the reality is much deeper than that. And once you start to see what's actually happening beneath that surface, the confusion starts to make sense. Now, here's where things start to become clearer, but also a little uncomfortable to accept. When someone's interest begins to fade, it's rarely because of one single moment. It's not usually that one message you sent, or that one thing you said. It's a gradual internal shift happening on their side. Something in how they feel, how they perceive, or what they want begins to change. And the important part is, this change often has more to do with them than it does with you. People don't experience connection in a fixed way. In the beginning, everything feels new. There's curiosity, attention, emotional stimulation. Your presence feels different to them, and that difference creates interest. But over time, that initial novelty starts to settle. And when it does, their mind naturally begins to evaluate things differently. Not consciously, not in a way they sit down and analyze, but subconsciously. They start asking themselves, without even realizing it, do I still feel the same? Does this still excite me? Is this what I want right now? And sometimes the answer slowly shifts. Not because you changed, but because their internal state did. Their priorities, their emotions, their level of readiness for connection. And when that shift happens, their behavior starts to reflect it. The energy lowers. The effort becomes inconsistent. The attention that once felt natural now feels like something they have to think about. And here's the part that makes it confusing for you. They don't always communicate this shift clearly. Most people don't fully understand their own feelings in real time. So instead of explaining it, they just pull back, gradually, subtly. And from your perspective, it feels sudden, because you weren't aware of the internal process leading up to it. You only notice the result, the change in behavior, the difference in energy, and your mind tries to fill that gap. It tries to create a reason that makes sense. And the easiest explanation it lands on is you. Something you did, something you said. Because that feels like something you can control, something you can fix. But the truth is, not every shift in someone's interest comes from something you did wrong. Sometimes, it comes from something they felt change within themselves. And that's something you were never in control of in the first place. And the more you try to make sense of that shift, the more your mind pulls you deeper into a loop that feels impossible to resolve. Because now it's not just about understanding them anymore. It becomes about understanding yourself through their reaction. You start measuring your value based on their attention. When it was there, everything felt easy. You didn't question yourself as much. You felt seen, acknowledged, even slightly more confident. But when that attention starts fading, it creates a gap. And your mind tries to fill that gap with explanations. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. Maybe I said too much. Maybe I didn't say enough. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to rewrite the entire dynamic in your head. Moments that felt genuine start to feel one-sided. Conversations that were natural start to feel like they meant less. And this is where things get distorted, because you're no longer seeing what actually happened. You're seeing it through the lens of how it ended. Your brain connects the ending to your identity. If they lost interest, there must be something about you that caused it. And that belief quietly starts shaping how you approach future interactions. You become more careful, more aware, more controlled. Not because you want to be, but because you're trying to prevent that same outcome from happening again. And the irony is, this is exactly what starts to create pressure in your behavior. The more you try to hold someone's interest, the less natural your presence feels. You're no longer just being yourself. You're adjusting yourself, monitoring how you come across, thinking about how you might be perceived. And that shift in energy is something people can feel, even if they don't consciously recognize it, because real connection isn't built on control. It's built on natural flow, on authenticity that doesn't require constant correction. And when that authenticity gets replaced with effort, something subtle changes. The interaction starts to feel different. Not worse, just less effortless. And over time, that difference can affect how the other person responds. Not instantly, not in a way that's obvious, but gradually, in the same quiet way interest fades. And this is why trying to fix yourself based on someone else losing interest doesn't actually solve the problem, because it keeps you focused on adjusting externally instead of understanding what's happening internally. And that keeps the cycle going, even when the situation itself has already ended. So the real shift doesn't come from trying to figure out exactly when or why they lost interest. It comes from understanding what their loss of interest actually means, and what it doesn't, because most of the time you're treating it like a final judgment on your value. Like their change in behavior is a reflection of something missing in you. But interest is not a fixed measurement of your worth. It's a dynamic response, influenced by timing, emotional availability, personal priorities, past experiences, and even things they don't fully understand themselves. Someone can genuinely enjoy your presence, feel connected to you, and still lose interest later, not because you became less, but because something in them shifted. And when you start seeing it this way, something important changes. You stop chasing clarity from them, and you start creating clarity for yourself. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" you begin to ask, "Why am I assuming this is about me?" That question doesn't immediately remove the feeling, but it creates distance from it. It breaks that automatic connection between their behavior and your identity. And in that space, you start to notice something else. The effort you were putting in, the way you were showing up, the consistency you had. And you realize that none of that suddenly became invalid just because their response changed. Your effort still existed. Your intentions were still real. And that matters more than how someone else processed it. Because the moment you base your sense of value entirely on how someone responds to you, you give up control over something that was never stable to begin with. People change. Their attention shifts. Their emotions fluctuate. And if your self-perception moves with all of that, you end up in a constant state of adjustment, never really grounded in yourself. But when you start separating your identity from their reaction, you gain something far more stable. A sense of self that isn't dependent on temporary interests. And from that place, you don't need to force connections to stay alive. You don't need to overextend just to keep someone engaged. You allow things to exist as they are, without trying to control the outcome. And ironically, That's where your presence becomes more natural again. Less forced, less calculated, more real. Not because you're trying to hold interest, but because you are no longer afraid of losing it. And once you reach that point, something shifts in a way that feels quiet but powerful. You stop reacting to every change in someone's behavior as if it's something you need to fix. You start noticing patterns instead of chasing explanations. You see when effort is mutual, and when it's not. You see when interest is consistent, and when it's fading. And instead of trying to pull it back, you let it reveal itself. Because real interest doesn't need to be forced, and it doesn't disappear without showing signs along the way. You just weren't looking for those signs before. You were looking for reassurance, not reality. And that's what keeps most people stuck. They hold on to how things felt at the beginning, even when things are clearly different now. They try to bring back a version of someone that no longer exists in the same way. But when you let go of that need to recreate the past, you start responding to what's actually in front of you, not what you wish it was. And that changes how you move forward. You become more aware of where your energy is going. You stop investing heavily in uncertainty. You stop chasing people who are slowly stepping back. Not out of ego, not out of pride, but out of clarity, because you understand that interest is shown through consistency, not occasional attention. And when that consistency isn't there, it tells you everything you need to know, even if no one says it out loud. And that understanding gives you something most people never develop: emotional control. Not the kind where you suppress what you feel, but the kind where you don't let every external shift dictate your internal state. You feel things, but you don't lose yourself in them. You notice changes, but you don't immediately blame yourself for them. And that's what keeps you grounded, even when situations don't go the way you expected. Because at the end of it, someone losing interest doesn't define you. It reveals alignment, or the lack of it. It shows whether something was meant to continue, or naturally fade. And once you truly understand that, you stop seeing it as rejection, and start seeing it as direction. If this made you see things differently, comment clarity. And if you want to understand more patterns like this, the ones that quietly shape your relationships without you realizing it, you already know what to do.